And all the activities we did, every student moved. Some of them moved 10%, some of them moved past the 50th percentile, because we were using the words in context. I wasn't just saying, here's a word, this is what it means. Here's a word, this is what it means. We did it so that it made sense to them when we were talking about the words. Okay, so I'm going to show you. So this is what a lesson plan looks like. And this is tweaked. I don't know about the rest of you, but it seems like all we do is test our kids in school now. So it's really hard. At one time, we could do this in 4 weeks. My plan now is when it's done, and we move on to the next unit. My goal is to have them learn, not necessarily to have them learn in a specific amount of time. Pre-test on week 1, and with my younger kids, I had them making a dictionary. I wanted them to cut those words out, and we were doing dictionary work. So now they're learning to alphabetize and everything's going in the dictionary. My middle school kids, we tried that the first year, not so much. So now they just get a word list. Week 2, we read news to you. We read it through once, we read it through a second time for comprehension, and we're highlighting main idea and supporting details. And then we go back and we start substituting. So there's a portion in news to you that says, he invented a new kind of rubber. We cross out kind and we put variety. That's one of our vocabulary words. So now we go through that article and where can we substitute those new words in this article? So we have now identified main idea, supporting details, and we are adding the new vocabulary. And I'm just gonna, so this is what a pre-test, post-test looks like. This is the first one for silly putty. And then they have the word list, and this is the one we start really working on those words. They always have this next to them when we're starting to highlight. And then we summarize, and we're going to go through all of this. So the second one has severe, variety, distinct, and concern. That was in the previous lesson. So now they have 6 new words and the 4 old words. And again, when I start really focusing on the games that we do, I focus really hard on the new words, but I do try to kind of review the old words as well. Same thing, we do a summary, and I'm just gonna, I put these in because I wanted you to have them to try. And so I did this chart so that I could keep track of my students. What was their pre-test score, the percentile? What was their post-test score? Did they make progress? Did they not? And then I was charting everybody's on a chart. If you have time, it's great. It's getting harder to do that. So what I really want to do right now is I want you to take out, can somebody hold this? I need to get out my paper. I want you to find your silly putty article. Because we're actually, and get your highlighter out, and you should have opened your putty. Can you still hear me? So find your silly putty like this, and your highlighter. McKenzie, will you read this for me? I've had a little bit of a frog today, and I'm afraid I'll miss my voice. So the first thing we do is somebody reads, and if the students are willing to read, they read. And if they're not, I just have them follow along while I read. Read the whole thing.
Do you like to play with silly putty? People have enjoyed this fun toy for 70 years. Silly putty is a ball of fun. Most American homes have silly putty. James Wright invented the toy by mistake. James was an engineer at the factory in New Haven, Connecticut. James was hired to make a new kind of rubber. The U.S. government needed a lot of rubber during World War II. Military trucks and planes needed rubber tires. Soldiers needed rubber boots, life rafts, and more. One day in 1943, James Wright was working in his laboratory, mixed 2 chemicals, and got a surprise. James had a new rubbery material that we now call silly putty. The material did not keep its shape. The government could not use James' invention, but people liked to play with it. Businessman Peter Hodgson started selling the material. He named this material silly putty. Peter put the silly putty inside red plastic eggs and sold them for $1 each. Soon the eggs were the fastest selling toy in America. Peter sold 250,000 eggs in the first 3 days. The first silly putty was tan. Silly putty has since been made into 13 different colors. You can find silly putty in bright colors, metallic colors, and glow-in-the-dark colors. You can even get silly putty that changes colors as you play with it. People love silly putty because they can play with it for hours. They can chase and bounce it. They pull it slowly and it stretches very far. They pull it quickly and it breaks in two. But silly putty is more than a toy. People squeeze it to make their muscles stronger. Astronauts use silly putty to stick things down and keep them from floating around in their spaceship. Silly putty is now a part of American toy history. Silly putty was given a special place in the National Toy Hall of Fame in 2001. This hall honors great toy ideas through the years. The Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. has also honored silly putty. Visitors can see an original silly putty egg. Silly putty started as James Wright's mistake and became one of the most popular toys in history. After 70 years, it still brings joy to millions of people. What do you like to do with silly?
Okay, so we read that, and then I have them get out their highlighters, and then they've all got silly putty too. So you're going to do the same thing my kids do. So the first thing I do is ask them, what is the main idea? And McKenzie has candy. So if you answer, you get candy. You get out that candy. Yes. So what is the main idea? Silly putty. Yeah, it's right up there. And that's part of why I like the news to you for my kids for language orders. The main idea is really like the top. So I have them highlight silly putty. That's the main idea. And when we talk about when you're reading an article and you summarize it, some article you have fluff and you have the things that are important, the things we need to summarize, and summarizing is part of the core. Okay, so we talk about the fact that fluff makes the article sound nicer, but it's not necessarily really important information. So I start reading a little bit at a time and I ask them, is this fluff or is this important? And we're going to do that. So I'm going to read. Yep, and that's important. Okay, that's why we have silly putty. He was hired to make a new kind of rubber. The US government needed a lot of rubber during World War II. Fluff were important. Important. That's why he was asked to invent the silly putty. The US needed a lot of rubber during World War II. Okay, military trucks, planes, rubber tires, soldiers needed rubber boots and rafts. Important? It is. That's why they were so concerned about rubber. We were in World War II for a very long time, and we were supplying the world with their equipment. And the United States was really concerned about having enough rubber. We needed it for boots. We needed it for rafts. And something, as we go through, I'll show you what I do with my kids. All right, on page 2. One day in 1943, James Wright was working in his laboratory. Important. Okay, when did silly putty get invented? 1943. So we're going to highlight 1943 because that's when this happened. He mixed 2 chemicals and got a surprise. Yeah, that's important. This is how it's all coming about. James made a new rubbery material we now call silly putty. Yeah, that's important. Okay, this is how silly putty came about. It didn't keep its shape. Did not keep its shape. Important? Yeah. And when I get to this point and the kids can't decide whether to highlight that, I ask them to imagine themselves out in the ocean with a raft made of silly putty surrounded by sharks. And I ask them if they would like to be in a silly putty raft out in the ocean. And so they realize that this is an important point. So the government could not use James Wright's invention. It's important. Okay, it's leading up to what's going to happen with silly putty. But people like to play with it. Okay, that's also an important part. That's bringing us to why we have silly putty. Businessman Peter Hodgins started selling the material. He named the material silly putty. He put the silly putty in red plastic eggs and sold it for $1 each. Okay, kind of fluffy stuff. Just kind of telling you how they got in the eggs and what happened. Soon the eggs were the fastest selling toy in America. You can fluff important if you think it's important. I let them highlight it. Peter sold 250 1,000 eggs in the first 3 days. Yeah, that's pretty important. We are in the middle of World War II. People are rationing everything and they're willing to put out $1 for this egg. And in 3 days, 250,000 were sold. And so then we do a little bit of math. So if you sell 250,000 eggs for $1 each, how much money did you make? $250,000 in 3 days. And then we compare that to like $500,000 today. It was pretty successful. Okay, page 3. The first silly putty was tan. Yeah, it's okay, not that important. Silly putty has since been made in 13 different colors. I highlight that because everybody here has a silly putty and now you've all got different colors and we're going to use those different colors in just a minute. Silly putty, you can find silly putty in bright colors, metallic colors, glow in the dark colors. You can even get silly putty that changes colors as you play with it. People love silly putty because they can play with it for hours. Kind of fluff, right? Just kind of filling in. They can shape and bounce it. They can pull it slowly and it stretches. They can pull it quickly and it breaks. Okay, I want my students to highlight that because we're going to switch out a lot of vocabulary words in that little part there. But silly putty is more than a toy. People squeeze it to make their muscles stronger. Astronauts use silly putty to stick things down and keep them from floating around. I think that's important too. We want to talk about why silly putty is important. OTs use silly putty now. If you've ever had OT and you're squeezing that, you're squeezing silly putty. Okay, so silly putty is now being used in a lot of different ways. Okay, last page. Silly putty is now a part of American history. Silly putty was given a special place in the National Toy Hall of Fame in 2021. This hall honors great ideas throughout the years. The Smithsonian Institute, Washington Museum in Washington, D.C. has also honored silly putty. Visitors can see an original silly putty egg. That's kind of fluff. Just this is where you can find it. Silly putty started as James Wright's mistake and became one of the most popular toys in history. That's important. Okay, we're talking about how silly putty became. So once we've done that highlighting, I want to go back now and we're going to put in our new vocabulary. And on your screen or in your packet, screen 12 has your vocabulary words for silly putty. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're only going to look at now the places we highlighted. Because I want to make sure they know that the things that we're finding important enough to highlight are the things we're going to add into our summary. So James Wright invented a toy by mistake. Then James was hired to make a new kind of rubber. So on your vocabulary words, there's a word that means different kinds. Variety. And they've got their word list. So I had them cross out kind, write in variety. So if you have a pencil, cross out kind and write in variety. The US government needed a lot of rubber during World War II. So we talked about that. We talked about all this war is going on. They need a lot of rubber. And I asked them, do you think the military was a little bit worried about having enough rubber? And so as we talk about that, there was that great worry. We use concern. So we write concern. That's one of their vocabulary words. So where it says the US government needed a lot of rubber, we write in concern. They were concerned about having enough rubber. That's why they hired James Wright. And then we move to page 2. And I have them. This is where I want you to get out your silly putty. James, so he invented it in 1943. He mixed 2 distinct, okay, so one of the vocabulary words is distinct. And we're going to write distinct next to new. New, distinct, rubbery material. Okay, this was something new, something that had never been mixed before, different from anything else. So now we have new, distinct, rubbery material we now call silly putty. Didn't keep its shape. The government couldn't use it. And I asked them, we talked about the raft. You don't want to be wearing boots made of silly putty. You don't want to be in a raft. Is it true that the government couldn't use the silly putty? Yes. And so one of the words that they have is apparent. So above where it says the government couldn't use it, they write the word apparent. It is apparent that the government couldn't use silly putty. And then we go down to where it says sold 250,000 eggs. And I asked them, you made $250,000 in 3 days. You think that would be a huge success? And of course it was. So there's a word that means huge, extremely large and huge, and it's immense. So I have them write immense above the 250,000. Okay, then we go to page 3. And if you have your egg, just kind of show me what egg you have. And look around at all the eggs. Do they look exactly alike? No, they are very different from each other. Some of you have gold eggs. Some of you have silver eggs. Some of you have glow-in-the-dark eggs. Some of you have bright orange eggs. They are very different from each other. So where it says 13 different, so a lot of different kinds. And what was that word I used for different kinds? Variety. So I'm going to write variety. And there's a word that means bright, lively, easy to see. Vivid. So I'm going to write variety of vivid colors. Okay. These are not dull colors. Silly putty doesn't. If you get a red egg, I don't know, you're not old enough. When I was a kid and we got silly putty, we used to flatten it out, push it on the newspaper and pull it up. And then your silly putty ended up being like this gucky color. Not too many people like the red silly putty. Everybody wants the bright. So now we have these bright, lively colors. What happened to your egg while it was sitting? Did it stay round? Did it kind of start to settle down? Okay, and that's what I want my kids to see is I have them tell me about your egg right now. What does it look like? So, and you have to be careful with your kids because they roll it and now they're all bouncing their silly putty and the eggs are going all over. So we do a little bounce. So you can roll the silly putty in a circle. It becomes a ball and you can bounce it. It also says you can stretch it. So I want you to just stretch your silly putty and tell me what happens. Stretch it nice and slow. Does it just keep going and pulling? And the kids love that. So now we're talking about it. What does that look like? You've stretched it, and it just keeps stretching as long as you want. And then I have them put it back together. So I want you to put and I want you to pull it as fast as you can. And tell me what happened. It breaks. And so one of the words that means to cut in half or break is sever. So above where it says it breaks in two, we write sever. And yes, and we have a hard time getting them to put the eggs down and stop playing. So now we've added some new vocabulary words. And once we've done this, we summarize. And that's what we're going to do here. I did, about a year ago, I started adding bullets because I found this is hard for some of our students to just look at the highlights. And so I've taken the highlights and I made bullet statements so that they can just look at the bullets. And it's a little bit easier for some of my kids with language disorders to use bullets. So then I say to them, when was silly putty invented? In 1943. And what was happening? World War II. The United States government was concerned. And what does concern mean? They were worried. They were worried about having enough rubber to supply military troops with boots, tires, rafts, etc. Who did they hire? James Wright. They hired him to invent a new variety of rubber. And what does variety mean? Different kinds. So now we're talking about those vocabulary words again. One day he mixed two chemicals and got a distinct kind of rubbery material, which became known as silly putty. And we do a group writing. Sometimes I get the white, they're so much more advanced than me. I like to use the paper board and just start writing and make them help me write. Sometimes that takes too long with some of our students and we go back to the computer. The putty did not hold its shape, and it soon became apparent that the military couldn't use the rubber. What does apparent mean? It's on your vocabulary list. What does it mean? True. It means true. It's true. Silly putty could not be used by the government. It didn't work. However, the public loved silly putty, And it became an immense success, selling 250,000 eggs in the first 3 days. What does immense mean? Huge. It was a huge success. I would love to make $250,000 in 3 days, even in today's money. It was a huge success. Today, Silly Putty comes in a variety of distinct and vivid colors and has a diverse range of use. And we forgot to add diverse, sometimes I forget. So I want them to talk about diverse. So what did we say it could do? You can bounce it, you can stretch it, you can break it. What do OTs do with it? Squeeze it for therapy. Astronauts use it, so it has a diverse range of uses. And we talk about that. You can use it. Diverse means a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways. Silly Putty can be shaped, bounced, stretched slowly. It can be pulled quickly, severing it into 2 pieces. It is used in therapy to strengthen hands. Astronauts even used it in space to keep things from floating around. Silly Putty began as James Wright's mistake and ended up as one of the most popular toys in America. So now we've read, we've done some writing together, we've summarized, we've worked on vocabulary. So reading and writing, determine the main idea of a text and explain how it's supported by key details. We did that. Produce clear and coherent writing. We did that. Engage effectively in a range of collaborative discussions. The idea behind the Silly Putty eggs is to get my kids talking, to get them participating, playing with the eggs and participating with me. Sometimes before we do the post test, we'll even make Silly Putty, which is a little messy, but they have a great time and we get them engaged in a lot of messy stuff. Determine, acquire, and use accurately grade appropriate, general academic, and domain specific words. Tier 2 vocabulary is general academic and sometimes domain specific. So I use this, and not so much anymore, but when I have time, I'll chart what each student's doing. So what I do after we've gone to this point, will you come and hold this? Before we post test, we either play Blurt or we do Jeopardy. Yeah, let's grab this one. Who has the yellow Silly Putty with the happy face? Somebody has a yellow. So when we're done, if you come up, the whole unit is here for you. Okay, so.
Are you done with your PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
So, if I'm doing Jeopardy, and who has Boardmaker? I love Boardmaker. I don't like Boardmaker online, and I know you can't buy it anymore. But if you go to eBay and buy the Spanish version of Boardmaker, it's $50. And when you open it up, it has the English version with it. Score. So these go on the top. And I use midget Tootsie Rolls. Okay, because these kids, I work for rewards and they do too. So you have, and you can, this one says, define it. What's the word? Use it in a sentence for 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then these are just the covers. So if they say, define it for 1, I'll take the top off and the words there and they have to define it. If they get it right, I leave this over here. If not, I cover it again and they just start collecting Tootsie Rolls. They think they're playing Jeopardy. I think we're doing drill and kill. And then same thing with what's the word? I'll give them the definition. They have to tell me what the word is. If they do define it for 4 and they get it right, they walk out with their pockets full of Tootsie Rolls and I'm okay with it. The other thing I do is I play Blurt. And when I play Blurt, we use the Silly Putty vocabulary. And the rules of the game are, for the younger kids, they have their dictionary. For the junior high kids, they have a word list. And so I spin the die, and if it comes up a 1, that's a 6. I want to move them around the board as much as I can, because every time they pass a go, they get a Jolly Rancher. And I don't know if you know it, but my kids think the blue Jolly Ranchers are to die for. And so it's this race to get around and get as many blue Jolly Ranchers. So I have the vocabulary words from my units. So I'll roll the dice and I either give them the word or the definition. And whoever gives me the answer first moves. But if they can give me the answer without using their dictionary or their word list, they double their move. And so again, we're doing these words so many times. I love it. They think they're just doing this game, and I think we're just drilling and killing these kids. And then as we move like from 1 unit to 2 units to 3 units, I focus really heavily on the vocabulary words for the current unit, but I try to move in some of the past words too. Because like I said, I want them hearing those words. And when we start summarizing Unit 2, Constitution Day, or Unit 3, whatever words we've had, even in the past units, those words are up for use in our summaries. Because again, we're using them over and over and over again. So we either do Jeopardy or we do Blurt, and then the next time we post test. And I find that because we're using the words in so many different ways, and we're targeting so many different parts of the Common Core, of the Utah Core, it's not common anymore, Utah Core, that I think they're learning the words because we're using them in so many different ways. We're playing games with them, we're writing with them, we're moving them around and exchanging them for other words. And with my kids, I see a lot of success with it. You have, like I said, you have the first 3 units. If you go into the session for UACT, you also have all of the news to you articles and the summaries. And if you decide this is something you want to try, I'm going to give you my personal email right now. It's NLESCOE55 If you say UACT 25, I will send you all 8. I'll send you the PowerPoint that has all 8 of the vocabulary words. And if you think this is something you like to do, if you happen to have a news to you, subscription, I can probably help. I can probably give you some of the others. I have 5th grade units and 6th grade units. It's a little bit hard to send them all out, but I'll see what I can do. Questions?
Can you repeat your email address?
Sure. NLESCOE55 and make sure you say UACT 2025, because if I don't know who you are, I'm deleting you because you're coming to my home. And whoever had the happy face, if you want to come up and grab this.
How long are your sessions?
Usually 30 to 45 minutes. And like, well, we only see them once a week. I don't know about the rest of you, but we have like 9 kids on our caseload. You do the best you can. And that's why I said, we used to try and get through this in 4 weeks. To me, the important thing is getting through it, having them get that exposure, doing the reading, doing the writing, learning about main ideas, supporting details, learning how to substitute words, playing with the vocabulary words. That to me is the goal, not necessarily getting through in 4 weeks anymore. So whatever it takes. And the kid, like I always start with Silly Putty because the kids have so much more fun with it. It's just a great introduction to literacy, to reading, to writing, to summarizing. And like I said, I just love having the kids learn in a context heavy area, not just doing, here's your vocabulary words for the week. And the nice thing was when I started this, I went to the resource teachers. I was in a middle school and I said, this is what I'm doing. And they said, give us those words. We're going to put them on our board and we will use them as much as we can. And those kids would come back and say, we used that word in class today. And I just thought, we have some great resource teachers. And as a speech pathologist, I could do my job without them. They just are such a support. And so if you can get, your resource teachers on board, even with 3 or 4 words, trying to incorporate those into their day. I know they already have a lot to do also, but just a lot of success with it.
So is this mostly resource kids, gen ed kids with resource support? Have you ever tried it with special class kids?
Well, these are resource kids.
Have you ever tried it with
Right.
or self-contained?
Haven't tried it with the self-contained. I did it with the moderates. Didn't do it with the self-contained because I usually have other programs I've developed for them. But with
tomorrow.
yeah, that's tomorrow.
Well, I'm coming tomorrow.
That's tomorrow. And tomorrow we do have some fun things to give away. So, and there is more than one. Tomorrow there's quite a bit more we're going to give away. But, you know, just trying to find new ways to help these kids learn because they struggle so hard and just kind of thinking outside the box on how we can help them make that progress. So any more questions? I'm sorry that was fast, but and the motor mouth, but I had a lot to get through in a short amount of time. Okay, that's it.